I'm Jakob Nielsen.
You're Jakob Nielsen. And are you from the United States?
No, I'm from Denmark.
Denmark?
Yeah.
Did you come with the acquisition? And so who are you? What do you do here, first of all?
Well, I'm the Director of User Experience for the Microsoft Dynamics team.
Wow.
Hmm?
And do you help user experience on all the different products in the Dynamics family?
My team works across Dynamics GP, Dynamics NAV, Dynamics SL, and Dynamics AX.
Wow. It's a fun job.
Yeah, it is.
And so did you work at one of the companies over in Copenhagen before the acquisition?
Well, I actually did. But I left that company to join Microsoft way before the acquisition.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you were one of the... you saw it coming and you said, oh, I'll just go over there before they get by.
Yeah. I joined the Navision company in '93.
Yeah.
And I worked there for 3 years on the first version of the Navision product for Windows.
Yeah.
And then I decided, well, we worked so much with Microsoft that I decided to, that I wanted to see that on the inside, and then I joined Microsoft in '96.
Right. Now, I used to be I won't even mention who I used to be a user of, but I used to work at a big company, bigger than Microsoft even,
yeah.
And I used a bunch of different enterprise level software, right? And UI and user experience wasn't exactly what I would think of when I think of those products.
No, exactly. It's a special category of applications. They do a lot of things for a lot of users.
Yeah.
And just as an example, if you look at the Navision product today, it has close to 1,400 screens.
1,400 screens.
Yeah. That
wow.
users.
Why so many?
Well, there's a lot of things that you need to do to run your business, and especially if you are a mid-market or enterprise business. There's a lot of processes, a lot of tasks, and so on.
Right. And so you can't make 1,400 screens look as exciting as like Halo 2 or something.
No,
like that, right?
no, that would be a challenge. But it's if you look at it, that number of screens, this is probably the team that has the most UI in in Microsoft.
Yeah.
In terms of number of screens that you can be in, and that can be a complex thing. So what we're trying to do is to simplify that for the individual user and make a simple experience.
Wow. How many people work on if there's 1,400 screens? It's not one guy or one girl like Jenny Lamb sitting in a corner,
no.
cranking out screens.
Well,
it's probably teams of people all over the world, right? Working.
My team is a team of user experience engineers. I have 2 disciplines in my team: user experience designers and user experience researchers.
Wow.
But we don't do every screen in the product. We work together with program management and development to do that.
Yeah.
And the way we cope with that design challenge is that we have some patterns of UI that are then applied. So it may sound a lot, 1,400 screens, but they really follow a much smaller set of patterns that are then applied across the application. So I think part of what we do is see that those patterns is actually useful for business applications, and usable for the users.
Right.
And some of those patterns that we have today was designed, maybe 10 years ago, and they may not stretch to what a business app does today. So part of what we do is working on the next generation to, come up with a new set of patterns, introduce that in the releases, and drive that.
Right. How far behind the state of the art does your team stay? And where I'm going with that is we have a technology called Windows Presentation Foundation here at Microsoft, or Avalon, codename Avalon.
Yeah.
How many years is it going to be before you can use that kind of technology in your
well,
UIs?
hopefully not that many. What we are seeing, for the next generation of our products, it's the Win32 technologies, DHTML and things like that are used. But what I see after that is that we will, take advantage of Avalon or Windows Presentation Foundation.
Yeah.
What we are building right now is, infrastructure in our clients that can do that pretty easily on the same type of application.
So do you have teams of people doing R&D with new bleeding edge technologies like that?
Yes, we have that.
Okay. And how do you see how do you see your teams changing in reaction to the demand to have a better UI, you know, a more artistic UI maybe? Because now you can have triangular buttons, right? Yeah. And how are you going to control your teams from going nuts?
What we have today is a very form-based UI.
Yeah.
It's like forms with a lot of data entry fields and lists and grids and so on, and they're very optimized for fast data entry.
Right.
We have users where you can't even see the cursor move when they actually type into those screens.
It's a very keyboard-friendly color.
And there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
One of the things that so it's very easy to get data into these systems. It's harder to get data out of the systems. So one of the things that we want to do is to generally make the app more visual. That there's key performance indicators, graphs, things that shows how's your business doing, and how are you doing in your daily work, and so on. And that's where you think of Windows Presentation Foundation as fitting in to do more interesting stuff around. You can see the data, but you can see it animated in a way so you can see trends, and you can do simulations and things like that on that data.
Yeah.
And of course, there's obvious things like having a product catalog that you can do product finders and so on. Have one product in the center, and you can have similar products around that, and so on.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunities for that to do.
But it still won't
be
Halo 2,
but it's sort of more usable and more desirable UI for the business app user.
Right. Are you looking at other input types now too, like text or like inking? I'm sorry, like on a tablet. I see you have a tablet PC here, and speech recognition is getting dramatically better in Windows Vista.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you thinking about how to make your app more usable with a pen or more usable with speech?
Speech is one of the areas that we are looking into as a division. The thing is that we have a core group of users today that sits at their desks, use the computer, keyboard, mouse, and so on. But we also have a group of users that may not even use a computer today, and we have
5/6 of the world's population doesn't use a computer yet.
Yeah, and this could be we have guys that drive on a forklift as part of their daily work, go out into the the warehouse, drives around on that, picks items for sales orders or shipments that needs to be done. And there's a situation there where it would work really well to have a speech interface to communicate with, because you need both of your hands and so on to do the picking and so on.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a little bit heavier items.
Yeah. You before we started taping, you were saying that you have a process that you go through with design. Explain how that works and why it might be different than if you're a designer on the Halo team or even on the Office team. Is it different?
I don't know if it is so different. It's all. I believe if you want to arrive at a good design at the end that's useful to a user, it's usable, it's desirable, and it's also feasible in a way that we can actually implement it in a product. If you want that at the end of your design process, there's some steps you need to take. And for me, that starts with really understanding who the user is.
Right.
And what is.
How do you do that? What
is the scenarios that this user is going to use this product in, and what are the tasks that this user is doing?
How do you understand who the user is?
Of course, we have a lot of domain knowledge, combined with the companies that's been brought together to form this division and the Dynamics team. But that's not enough. We need to do research. So we're spending a lot of time with customers, usually on site. So I was talking about the warehouse worker previously. We've spent, I've had folks on my team and with program management and planning spend a lot of time looking at, what happens in a warehouse. What's the operations there? What are the things, the goals of those users, what are the pain points that they have with today's system, and so on. Sitting down with them, observing what they do. Actually, when you observe in a warehouse, you don't sit down because it's like moving around and so on. So that's doing, field research.
Yeah.
There, and as part of, during the last 3 years or so, we probably gone out and talked to about 1,400 individuals that use business apps.
You personally?
Well, no, I haven't. The team combined.
That would be impressive. That's a lot of people. It doesn't sound like a lot of people, but I've been around the world.
It's a lot, in site visits and focus groups in the usability lab and so on. And we've used that as part of sort of our vision process for the next generation user experience and apps.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, I can't go out and visit 1,400, and it's not something that we can, even though we probably do that every day, in some part of the organization. It's not something everyone can do. So we need to have some kind of a tool that we can take that data that we collect as part of our field research and bring that to the desktop of every program manager, developer in the division, because that's the information that they need in order to start up the design process.
Yeah.
So the tool that we've sort of created for this is something that we call the Dynamics Customer Model.
Okay.
And it's not that we sort of invented all of that from scratch. It's based on techniques that is in the user experience community. One of them is creating what is known as personas.
Yeah.
So
you've read Alan Cooper's books.
Oh yeah. So we created those for our users, and we have in that model we have about there's 50 different personas.
So fairly granular.
Yeah, it is, because they actually describe. It's more tailored roles that you have in a company. So you could have the warehouse, the warehouse worker is John. There's Sammy, the shipping and receiving clerk. There's April, the accounts payable
clerk. Is that what's up on your wall here?
Yeah, that's what we actually have on the wall.
Yeah.
This is one of the sort of artifacts that we've made as part of the model. So we have this poster that sort of has all of the roles there, and there's a picture for each of them and a small description of what they do.
Now these are
in the business.
These are all made up, but based on your research.
Oh, they are all made up, but all based on the research. So it is fake persons that we have there, but have been very key for us to base it on the research that we have.
Right. And how does that help you design software? I mean, how does having a few fake names and a few fake people?
Well, it helps a lot because it sort of sets a common platform for talking about our users. Yeah. And if you know a development team, there's all sorts of opinions about who the user is.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the user. The thing is that they don't know the same thing about the user. So personas is a way to sort of get to a more common ground on who we're building for. So every design project typically starts with who's this for? Now we're designing for Susan. What would Susan's experience be like? What is it that Susan needs to do in her day, and so on.
Interesting.
And what we've done as part of the model is creating a website that's available on our internet, where we can drill into that research.
Right.
And what we've done.
So you have it here. Yep.
Yeah, I can show you that. Let's try to drill into. Let's say we can drill into Sammy as we're sort of moving a little bit around here, but Sammy, the shipping and receiving clerk.
Yeah.
And it's not just the picture and a small description. It's a fairly comprehensive description of what are the typical demographics of Sammy. Where do you find Sammy in the organization? Information that makes you get to know Sammy better. What does his day look like? We know that he typically gets in at 6:30 in the morning. What does he do first, and
So
and
even
so on.
that piece of data was based on observing how the workers come to work and what they do. And
Yeah. So
SAMI might represent 100 workers, or
well, in this case, you know, as you drill into all of the information that we have on SAMI, we can actually go in and look at, you know, where did we do that research, in what parts of the world did we do the research, and we can drill into the actual site visit reports. So in a specific company with a specific SAMI, you know, what was the findings there?
wow.
And of course, we don't pretend that this is, you know, the entire truth about all SAMIs working in mid-market and enterprise companies across the world. But it's a good starting point, you know, and it's better than, you know, a very, you know, flexible opinion about what the user is.
My user wants this. And
that could be, you know, what I like, or what my, you know, someone that I met sometime, you know, in the past liked, or whatever, or what you just heard.
Yeah.
So it's a good starting point. And of course, as we work through the whole process, this is very central through the process. You know, as we do you know, the designs and iterate over the designs.
Yeah.
We bring in SAMIs into our usability labs and test out paper prototypes, you know, more high fidelity prototypes with SAMIs. And this is another chance of learning more about you know, SAMIs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we have
so
quite a few usability labs here,
Yeah.
particularly in Redmond,
Yeah.
but I think you have them in Copenhagen as well. Right?
Yeah, we have one in Copenhagen as well. Yeah,
Wow.
and in the site in Fargo also too.
So Alan Cooper wrote that book. God, I was in meetings with him, I think, 9 years ago when he was writing that book, 9 or 10 years ago. What's the design principles that are being developed today that you're going to be using in 5 or 10 years?
Well, one of the things that you know, a little bit back to the immediate complexity of a business app with all of the screens and reports and things you can do.
Yeah.
One of the things that we, you know, imagine as a user coming to that, you know, finding the places where you need to do your work in all of that.
Yeah.
That's not easy.
No.
You know, what is relevant for me in that? And one of the things that we've started rolling out in our products is the notion of a role-based experience. Okay. So instead of when you log into the business app, that you see everything as part of the navigation, you just see what you need to use in your work.
So you see Sammy's view.
You see Sammy's view or Susan's view and so on. And the things in that experience that's, hey, what we're aiming at is an experience where a Sammy would say, this system is built for me.
Yeah.
And Susan would say the same, and all of the rest of the 50 roles would say, this is built for me. It has exactly what I need to do in my job, and when I get into the experience, it has the things that I need to take care of right now, or later in my day.
Yeah.
So that's a whole sort of concept of what we're driving, and I think that's, you know, in business apps would be a thing we would talk about in 10 years that was introduced.
Interesting.
We've done that in the Dynamics GP9 that came out lately. And the first part of that is the concept of role-based home pages.
Yeah.
So instead of just having a list of menu items, you know, with all the forms and tasks and so on, you have, you know, a homepage that sort of gives you a snapshot of your business as a user.
Yeah.
What do you need to do and so on. And that's a concept that will evolve, making that more useful and usable.
Interesting.
But also go deeper into that and change the navigation of the app. So it's also role-based.
Okay.
And further...
are you going to go toward the Office 12 UI then? Because Office 12 has no menus, right? But it is role-based. If you click on Edit, that you're in the Edit role, and all the UI changes to be to give you editing functions. You know, all the other functions go away. You know, and get out of your way.
It's sort of specific to the context you're in and the task that you're doing. Well, it's pretty exciting. There's many exciting things happening this year. You know, Vista is coming out. Office 12 is or I guess you need to say Office 2007 now
Yep.
is coming, and both of them have major improvements to the user experience and to the UI, and sort of treading new ground for UI.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Office as the menus that they've redone the menus and with very, very good feedback and so on.
Yeah.
And
isn't it frustrating as a designer how slow the market moves, though? It took 4 years for the Office team to do all that research to get to where they felt comfortable enough changing the UI like that, and even then they're getting a lot of heat for doing it, aren't they? It's like, whoa, you're changing the UI, and now I have to retrain all my workers.
Yeah.
Even though everybody could, if you use it for 3 hours, you can see a huge improvement.
Yeah.
But people don't want to change.
No, I can see that challenge in doing that. You have with Office, you have a lot of users, and they probably all have different opinions about what the UI should be or whether it should change or not, and so on. Yeah. But I think the amount of work that the design team around that has done in understanding what are users doing, based on the instrumentation of Office and so on, and say, okay, how can we make that experience better? How can we make them take advantage of more of what's already in Office is very good.
Can you give us some? You have several new products coming out this year, right?
Mm.
Can you give us some example of something that you changed in this year's product that wasn't there, in the previous products?
During the summer, we'll come out with Dynamics AX 4.0. Yeah. What we're doing there is things like changing the navigation in that app to make it more familiar with the Microsoft app.
Okay.
We have things like favorites that we add, so you can have your favorite places that you have as part of the navigation. There's things like searching across the data, so you can search customers' orders and things like that in just one UI and so on. So that's one thing that's coming out. Later this year, you will start seeing Dynamics nav come out, and that's really exciting, because what we want with that is really to show what a business application should look like on Vista with Office 12. And so there's a lot of things happening there in the UI that's sort of taking the whole notion of role-based UI and taking that a step further.
Right.
So that's what we're working on right now, and I can't show you so much now, but I hope you'll be back later to take a look at that when we can.
We will.
Yeah.
What kind of skills do you need in workers coming up, and how is that different from the people you would have hired maybe 5 or 10 years ago, or when you got hired, right? Probably when you got hired, if you just had Photoshop skills, you were like a UI god, right? Yeah. Now you probably need somebody with a very different set of skills, right?
Well,
I would assume. I'm
not so sure about that. It's like,
so you still need the Photoshop guy who can design icons and.
That is still needed. Visual design is a key part of what we do, and that happens to take place a lot in Photoshop and so on. But it's more than just that.
We have a few tools coming out, by the way.
Yeah.
The whole expression tool set is they're catching up. It's pretty neat stuff, particularly if you have a tablet.
Yeah. And I think it's broader than that. It also goes into interaction design and so on. And that's where there's maybe less work done in Photoshop, but more work done in paper prototypes, Visio, PowerPoint, sketching out what the interaction is and so on.
Yeah. Tell me about the prototyping, because this is a key Alan Cooper point too, right? Yeah. Don't design in Visual Studio because if you show that to a customer, they assume it's real, right? Or design on paper and say, is this screen sort of how you would use it?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about.
Well, the key thing in the whole process is that first of all, you need to generate a lot of ideas about what could be a solution to the problem that you've identified. So in that it's it's make it as easy as possible for you to visualize what those ideas are. I think that's one of the things that user experience can bring to the table, is that they can visualize stuff. As you try to, as you refine those designs, it's key that you don't spend too much time doing each of the refinements.
Yeah.
Because you want to do many iterations on a given design. So the easier you can make that whole thing, on paper or just in visual or PowerPoint, the better, because you're not that, married to a given idea because you spend so much time on it. So you can just throw it away and say, oh, that was a bad idea. When we tested this with users, or you did a walkthrough of it, it was just not a good idea. Let's work on the next one.
Yeah.
And it gets even more challenging if you are trying to iterate on the development team, and they don't necessarily like that you give them one design that they start implementing, and then they say, hey, I changed my mind. It's not these menus, it's this way of doing menus, and go change the code. That's not something that you can easily do.
Yeah.
Not without breaking the relationship to the development team.
Yep.
Yeah.
You care about that a lot, don't you?
Well, we
managers have to care about that, don't they?
No, I think as
keeping harmony on all the various people working
in user experience, we do very little of what actually ends up on the final CD. If you think about the bits that's put on that final CD, we may do the icons that get into the product, but everything else, all the rendering code, all the functionality and so on, we need to have someone else to do that for us.
Yeah.
So we need to, have this pipeline of designs being, work with that, with program management that, works with development to get it into the product.
Yeah. This is where I was going with.
So it's a key thing to have a really good relationship with those disciplines.
This is where I was going with when I asked you about Avalon, because Avalon and WPF and the new Sparkle tool, or the interaction. What is it? I hope I'm not saying it wrong. The interaction expression designer. Lets designers actually build the UI that goes in the final product.
Yeah.
And how are you looking forward to those days, where you actually are going to do the actual design and the coders are going to add the functionality underneath the UI?
Well, I think that
because right now you say you have to talk somebody who understands Visual Studio.
Yeah.
Into building the paper prototype that you worked with a customer on.
Yeah.
Now you can actually go one more step, right? The design team can, and that should lead to better UI and better experiences. But it's 5-10 years away. I don't know.
No, it may be closer to that, and of course, things like that changes how much the user experience discipline does in the product.
Yeah.
That you can take pieces out and say, okay, the designer can do that, as part of the finalization process on a design, or as part of the design process, and that's great. I don't think that the process of actually getting the app built and so on and functioning and having the business logic and so on will go away. So there's still this, even though the borders of what gets done by designers in UX and by developers goes away necessarily. It's not like we could do the app just because we have the tools to do the UI. There's a lot more inside of the product.
Yeah, you're never going to learn C# code.
Yeah.
Even if you go deeper into the product, you still need to talk a developer into actually adding the bits that make the thing light up and work.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So for the next year, you probably won't be able to use Sparkle. So that's probably more on a futuristic.
No, I think we already started sort of doing projects on the side where we are sort of experimenting with it to sort of see what kind of possibilities it gives us and so on.
Interesting.
But right now it's still specifications, visual specs, and functional specs that we are writing.
Right.
And I don't see that going away necessarily, but
no.
It's good that there's new tools coming.
No. Anything else you want to tell me about the Dynamics team and maybe how it's different from other software development projects? Or You know,
You
even
know-
here at Microsoft, or even external. You know, how is it different from Adobe Photoshop, or or QuickBooks, or
You know, it's I think it's different. You know, given the domain that we work in, it's a different type of product, a different type of complexities that we deal with compared to other Microsoft teams. We talked about the number of different users that we serve, 50 roles and so on. So we need to do things to, you know, to cope with that challenge in the design.
Yeah.
You know, as you've seen in previous video blogs about the Dynamics team, we have the fact that we are actually not in the same site, geographic site
Yep.
in the world.
You have teams in Fargo and
Yeah, my team
Copenhagen.
is in Redmond and in Fargo and in Copenhagen.
Wow.
So we do
Do
designs.
you get any sleep? Because I've talked to some people who work with teams around the world, and that's a big threat. Is their work-life balance goes completely nuts.
Yeah.
Because they can work 24 hours a day, right? You have a team when you're sleeping. There's a team over in Copenhagen working, right? You can wake up at 3 in the morning and go, "Hey, what's up, guys?"
That's right. I started my day today, at 6:30, doing a review of some visual designs that we need to hand off to development.
Yeah.
And it takes some strong coffee to be able to take a look at the pixels at that time in the morning.
Yeah.
And for Copenhagen, it's having meetings in the evening to be able to talk to folks in Redmond.
Yeah.
But that's we've been together as a team for more than 3 years now, and I think we've found a way where we can have a reasonable work-life balance and sort of cope with that.
Yeah.
But it takes, in the beginning, it takes some time to just to understand that, hey, this is really early in Redmond, or this is really late in Copenhagen. Oh man, it's right now, it's Friday night in Copenhagen, so you don't want to book a meeting at that time.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty proud of my team, that they've actually that they're able to work together and do designs in conf calls and
Yeah.
using live meeting and things like that.
Yeah. How often do you go over there?
Well, I used to live in Copenhagen. I moved with my family this summer,
Yeah.
and since last summer I've been there 4 times. So it's like,
Wow. They have Wi-Fi on the SAS, right?
Yeah.
I love that. You can be on an email all the way over. Although my battery only lasted 3 hours, so you have to do the 3 battery thing.
Yeah, I guess it's how you look at it.
Yeah.
Before you could have a place where you couldn't be on the internet and were free for answering emails and so on.
Yeah.
But I guess you can just don't need to pay for it and
No.
sign up for it if you don't want it.
Yep.
So no, that's great. So
Well, cool.
yeah,
Thanks. We're looking forward to seeing your team work.
yeah, thank you.
We'll be back. Thanks. Hey.